David, there's something you need to know. Music isn't king here. That was the moment where the truth confronted the reality of my heart, which was I had elevated something. I'd elevated people's opinions of me. I had elevated my own measure of success or greatness or, perfection or whatever. I'd elevated that beyond, above the lordship of Jesus in my life.
Hey, welcome to the podcast. My name is Joel, and I'm your host for this new series on the podcast, where I'm going to sit down with worship leaders and worship pastors from across the body of Christ. We'll be talking about their personal journey with the Lord, worship leading in a local church context, and also what it means to become a worshiper in spirit and in truth. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all the things to get the word out there. But without any further ado, let's get into this episode. Well, welcome back to the Worship Matters podcast, and I'm so excited today to be joined by the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, that is David Funk. And so welcome, David, to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
I'm excited about this conversation, and I've been obviously blessed by your ministry from afar for a very long time. I'm sure many of you tuning in today are very familiar with David as being part of the Bethel Music Collective, part of Bethel Church, worship leading, songwriting, touring, producing, all the things. But David, before we sort of get deep into the conversation, the deep end of all things that are involved in your world, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself and tell the listeners, I guess, a bit of your journey, where you grew up, your church background, all that sort of thing, and then we'll go from there, see how the conversation goes.
Okay, yeah. Well, yes, my name's David Funk. I live in Redding, California, in the U.S. of A. And but I didn't grow up here. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, which is in the southeast. And I lived there for the first 18 or 19 years of my life. Grew up in the church. My parents are Christians. My dad's a pianist, and he was on the worship team for a little bit while I was a kid. And so he was a big reason why I wanted to learn piano and wanted to get into music. And he's always obviously been a big encouragement to me. And as well as telling me as well as a reminder to keep practicing when I was a kid. So all types of encouragement. So I grew up in Georgia, and then I moved out here. I'm trying to think of what all to hit, but grew up in the church, started playing music just as a teenager in my youth band, and just met some friends that loved God and loved music, and we were kind of in that golden era of our teenage years where we didn't have a lot of responsibilities, we didn't have a lot of bills to pay or anything, and we were just able to really devote ourselves to having fun and getting really awesome at our instruments and our crafts, and doing it while serving the church. And in Atlanta, there's a lot of amazing churches that have a lot of services. And so it's like we had, it was a good place of opportunity that just by default, it's like, oh, I'm going to go serve here. And it was a good growing ground for me. A great training ground. And so, I moved to Redding in 2016. I was 19 years old, and I came to do the School of Supernatural Ministry. Yeah. It's not just natural, it's supernatural. And to be honest, I didn't mention this, but I grew up Baptist, Southern Baptist Church. And I love it. I love my pastor. I have so many mentors still from there. And Bethel is a bit in the different world of church, Yeah. And so I didn't really fully know what I was getting into. I had heard of Bethel music, and I think we would lead Furious by Jeremy Riddle at youth group. We'd lead, Jesus culture songs. Sure. One Thing Remains, So that was kind of my framework of Bethel music. And then when I was in college, We Will Not Be Shaken came out, and I was like, whoa, this is so cool. And so honestly, one of the big draws for me was I want to go where it seems like all of these amazing musicians that love God are converging, and they're amazing. Like they're so good, And so I want to go be around those people and be in that environment that's obviously facilitating their creativity and blessing it, and giving space for it, and etc. So I don't know if I could have articulated that because I was also 19, didn't know anything, but I think that was a lot of what was in my heart, and so the Lord made a way for me to come, and I got to do it with some friends from Georgia as well. And yeah, BSSM just kind of rocked my world, rocked my socks right off. And because like I said, I didn't really know what I was getting into on the church side of things. Like I just had heard of the music. I knew who Brian and Jen were. I knew who Jeremy and Steph were. I knew who a lot of the band guys were, just being a fan, And then that first week of first year, I was like, whoa, this place is not like where I grew up. Which I had been, in Georgia, I had been exposed to some more like Pentecostal charismatic churches. But again, it wasn't my framework of how I grew up, We didn't talk as much about the gifts and manifestation of the Holy Spirit. It's like we more often than not would talk about the Holy Spirit as our comforter, as our guide, as our conviction, as our all of these true things about him and his nature, but just less of an emphasis on on the gifts and on healing, on prophecy, on tongues, on whatever, fill in the blank. So, and obviously, if you know anything about Bethel, you can probably assume that it's not, we talk a lot about that stuff here. So,
for sure.
I was just kind of thrown into the deep end in a beautiful way, and thankfully, it was just the Lord always knows what's best for us, and he just surrounded me with a community of people that I needed to be surrounded by as I was acclimating to, I think, this new environment. So that's how I kind of came to be here. And then I did 3 years of ministry school, and I interned with Callie Heiligenthal, who was a part of Bethel Music at the time, and she was the worship pastor over our second year school of ministry. And that was just a really impactful year for me, getting to be under her leadership and under her mentorship. And then, I stuck around. I met my wife in second year. She wasn't in school, but while I was in second year, I met her.
Yep. She
grew up here in Reading, and so we just stayed. Her parents live here. Now we have a son, so it's nice to have grandparents in the same town.
Come on. Yeah.
And I honestly love it here. I love serving at my church. I lead worship on the weekends. I'll play from time to time, and then I'm on staff as our quote unquote music director. But really, I usually redefine that as I'm kind of like just a band musician leader, helping our musicians, develop, onboarding new people, making sure people have what they need, feel like they're winning, answering that kind of thing. And so that's kind of what I'm doing now. And like you said, I do a lot of travel and producing as well, but I just love it here, and I love our church, and that's kind of maybe a really running gun of my story.
So good. No, that's a great overview of the life of David so far. I love it. And I do want to hone in on a couple of those things, especially what you mentioned there about the music or lead band member or whatever the title might be, the working title. But we'll get into that in just a moment. I wanted to ask, with we've had several worship leaders on the podcast so far, and generally they can point to a time in their journey where they've either not made it on team, or they've had to have a real heart check moment, or perhaps they've received a wound from a friend who's that's been something of a something that they can hang on to or go back to as a sort of a grounding moment, I guess. Have you got something similar to that you go back to?
Yeah, definitely. Got a couple, probably. Right. I mean, one that always comes to mind when I think of, I think I was telling a friend about this the other day or something. I can't remember. But just a moment in my life that I can point to and be like, that was definitely a very shifting moment for me, was when I first came to first year, and I was on the team. I had made it onto worship teams, our student worship teams. and like I was one of the better keys players. Whatever. So it's like it wasn't that I didn't make it. It was that I did, and that I probably had a little bit too big of a head about it,
Okay. Yeah.
And so we do our first set. Our very first set, it's probably the second week of school or something. Mm-hmm. And sound check is, I don't even remember. It's one of those things where it's like, it's so long ago and
Sure.
most of the details aren't even important, but I just remember it not going well. Like something wasn't going well. Something was going wrong. I was getting frustrated, yada, yada, whatever. And so after our sound check, the worship pastor, the first year worship pastor at the time, her name was Joanna. She kind of pulled me aside. She's like, is everything all right? You seem kind of agitated. You seem like a little frustrated. Like, talk to me about what's going on, very Bethel, very heart emotive language that I was also not used to. Okay. It's like, man, what am I feeling? I don't know how to, but she's listened very like a good leader is like, I'm not going to just come in right away with what I think you should know. It's like, tell me about what you're experiencing, and so she listened. I was like, oh, this, that, maybe someone was late or this person's missing, whatever. Sure. So she's kind of patiently listening. And then she, she lets me finish and she's like, David, there's something you need to know about this place, about Bethel, is that music isn't king here. And that was the moment that in my church, like my good church boy mind, it's like, well, yes, obviously, God is king, Jesus is king. My mind is knowing this. Yeah. But that was the moment where the truth confronted the reality of my heart, which was I had elevated, and maybe it wasn't, only quote unquote music, but I had elevated something. I'd elevated people's opinions of me. I had elevated my own measure of success or greatness or, perfection or whatever, fill in the blank. I'd elevated that beyond, like above the lordship of Jesus in my life. And so instead of taking cues from the Holy Spirit, I'm taking cues from how do I be the best? How do I, whatever. So that was very much a marking moment of me, of her saying, music isn't king here. Like, and again, it hit my head and I was like, well, yeah, duh. But over the course of that kind of 9 month, even into my second year, in second year, it was more of a I didn't make the team kind of moment. And I played keys and I played bass, but I didn't make it as a worship leader. Okay. And I think that year was the Lord just expanding on this lesson, if you will, of I am not what I do, I think because in the moment in second year, I'm like, okay, I'm not a worship leader. Like, okay, cool. And it's like, I kind of let the external, inform my identity. Sure. And then in third year, turn around, I'm interning with Callie, and I thought I was gonna be like the musical intern, like kind of what my role is now. It's like, I'll be the band guy, and she's like, no, you're, like I want you to lead worship. So it's I kind of experienced this whiplash of but I think it was the Lord just breaking down okay, you're not your perfection. In fact, your perfection is dirty rags to me, Wow. Don't need any of it. And you're also, you're not what you think is your greatest gift to bring. The thing that you think you can bring best to me, that's not even what I want from you, Sure. And so I think obviously that whole journey of this kind of dismantling of obviously some unhealthy belief systems and stuff. Yep. And then I think looking back, now I am in this position, funnily enough, ironically enough, almost, where the Lord is using my love of excellence and skill and to actually invest into people instead of just, maybe feed my own ego or whatever. And I don't think that I could be doing what I'm doing now in the, dare I say, I guess, purity, not that I do it perfectly, but in the purity that I feel like I can do it now if I hadn't had those kind of, honestly, those two are really standout moments. Sure. Of music isn't king and I'm not what I do. Just because I'm, someone's saying I'm not this, or someone saying I am that. Like, you know what I mean? So
Totally.
those are kind of the two big moments for me.
That's so good. All right, I'm going to go because this might not transcend in like order, but
Sure.
I want to sort of hone in on some of that, what you're bringing up there about music not being king and the excellence versus perfectionism conversation. I want to dive into that because obviously with Bethel sort of, exploding in terms of its global reach over the last number of years, it would seem from the outside, obviously there's that high level of excellence, and there's a real like influence in that space. So even in your role now as sort of an MD there, how do you continue to, I guess, maintain that excellence, or that, whether that comes to like, these are the tones that we're going for, this is the sound of the house, and so on and so forth, and developing that versus, I suppose, then getting caught up in the trap of performance and perfectionism, and so what are some sort of goalposts or rudders for you that help you and the team in that pursuit of excellence and bringing your best, but not making it the king?
That's so good. That's a great question. I mean, one of our core values is it very much highlights this tension, and so hopefully I will give a decent enough answer. But one of our core values is giving God what he wants. He wants our hearts and he wants our hands, and those two, they play together, like they work together. And we see it in Scripture a lot of God not just wants all of our life as worship, but he also wants to be approached in specific ways. Like he wants the song to be sung to him. He wants hands to be lifted. He wants, and looking at the Old Testament, he wanted the temple to look a certain way, and they only got the best craftsmen, and they only got, the people who were skilled in what they did. And then even zoning in specifically to the context of music, like the tribe of Levi, like that was their job, was to be awesome at music.
True.
And so like that's, kind of what I encourage our team is like, this is our job. This is our, now we may not be a part of the tribe of Levi as New Testament believers. We're all a kingdom of priests. Like we're all priests.
Yep.
But we have a responsibility. It's an act of faith, just like it is to give our money, for us to bring our best gift to the house of God. And so if you're a great drummer, like you should be bringing that to the table. And it doesn't mean that we're entitled to serve in the way that we want to, but it needs to be, I think it means that we need to be willing to, like I said, bring our best gift to the table. And I think the thing that I, to tie it back to the Scripture and to tie it back to the heart and the hands is in 1 Samuel, there's that Scripture as Samuel's speaking the words of the Lord and saying, the Lord says, I desire obedience over sacrifice.
Right.
And I think sometimes we think it's like, okay, that, that can mean like, if any, I might stumble over my words here, but it's like, Samuel's not saying, I don't want a sacrifice, I only want obedience. What Samuel is saying is the Lord's defining the type of sacrifice that is acceptable to him. Right. And acceptable sacrifices come from a place of obedience.
Come on now.
We can't bring a sacrifice to God that's pleasing to him unless it's coming from a place of obedience. We saw that in Cain. We saw that in Ananias and Sapphira. Like Jesus or God or Yahweh wasn't Lord in whatever of those given situations. Like Cain was he was bitter, he was doing it out of duty, he whatever. He wasn't coming with an obedient heart, but he still brought a sacrifice.
Right. Right.
But we also see that it wasn't his best. Yes. And I think obedience begets best sacrifices. Yes. And that can be sticky because it's like, well, people can have an awesome heart and still suck, at their craft. But I think that is an okay place to start. But I don't think that we should settle for staying there. I think an obedient heart is one that's willing to grow as well. So,
Yeah, man, there's so much gold in that. I love it. Practically speaking, then, when it comes to things like developing your craft and everything like that, let's say, like I say, there's a fairly defined sound in your house. You've got, say, a guitarist who comes along and is like, well, this is my sound. It's like, I love rocking the wah pedal or something like that. I don't know. Like, whatever it might be. I'm sure there's people listening to this who might have people on their team. Yeah. They're like, I know the sound that we're going for. How do I have those conversations with those team members who might have, I guess, a predefined sound of this is what I bring and this is my version of best, or, my opinion of what it should sound like? How do you go about having those conversations?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we, like you said, we have a very set sound. And so a lot of times that serves us as a gift because it's very easy for us to point to that and be like, hey, like this is what we're going for. Mm-hmm. But I can also put myself in the shoes of if I'm a local worship pastor in middle America or whatever, and it's like I may only have a couple people on my team anyway. Yep. I don't know if I can afford to lose my guitar player, I think that can be tough, but again, it kind of comes back to as if I'm the worship pastor, I'm serving a vision. I'm serving my senior pastor's vision, and ideally, I want people on my team that understand that and are willing to serve my vision as I try to serve my senior pastor's vision. Yeah. As he's trying to serve God's vision, for this group of people, whatever congregation that may be. And not to be like, oh, well, the senior pastor wants it this way. It's like, look, I've been in, I don't know exactly how I would verbatim say it, but it's like the assurance of, the Lord's entrusted me with this position. My senior pastor has entrusted me with this position. This is what I feel like we're going for. And this is how these are the types of team members I'm looking for, and I think, honestly, at the heart of it is any leader is looking for team members that are teachable and that are humble, It's like you can love your wah pedal, but if you have a soft heart about it and you're willing, it's like, let's try it on one of the songs, Right. And it's like, and if you're down to do that, then we can do anything. Obviously I'm not in this position, so it's easier said than done, but I would almost argue it's better. Brian and Jen have said the same thing. It's better to have a small worship team of people who are humble and willing to, who just want to serve the church than to have a big worship team of awesome musicians that are, just they're like you said, they are bringing only their version of what they think is best, and they're not willing to hear, feedback, basically.
Yep. Yeah, totally. No, that's a great answer and very helpful. Let's dive into music directing, because I think that you hold a somewhat unique position of being a worship leader, but also regularly MDing as well. Talk to me how you sort of wear those different hats, and what's your approach, I guess, to when you come to MDing, being a worship leader yourself. What's your approach to setting up the team well and, I guess, supporting the worship leader? I don't put words in your mouth, but in terms of, has that changed over time, wearing those two hats? Talk to us about the whole gamut of music directing.
Yeah, I think it has changed because I think it will continue to change. I'll probably continue to grow in this, but I think I've just learned the importance of supporting the leader more than I maybe obviously, again, it's one of those things where in my mind it's like I would have said at any time, like, oh yeah, of course, that's the role of the MD, is to support the leader. But I think in my younger years, aka even probably like a year ago or whatever, it's like when I'm showing up to MD, I'm like, I'm excited about different musical ideas that we could potentially get into, Yeah. And some leaders they're fine with that, and it's like and they thrive on that. And that is a form of supporting them and serving them. But most of the time leaders just again, it kind of goes back to this idea of, Bill even says it this way of kind of like, show me that you can serve my vision and then I will serve yours. Like there's nothing that can stop me from serving your vision if you can show me that you can serve mine, you know? Wow. And so I think leaders more than anything are looking for those people of like I want to hear what's in your heart, but I want to know first that you're willing to come under something, you know, because that's who can go the furthest, is people that can come under someone else's vision. So anyway, again, I'm getting off into the tangential, more philosophical, but practically I feel like, yeah, I come to the table now a little bit more, or at least I try to more with, I'm trying to keep the big picture of the set in mind always. And I'm trying to let the history that I have with the worship leader, like, be a strength, and like, let them, you know, the goal is they get to do what only they can do, and they don't have to think about the things that I can come in and do, which is kind of true for every position, obviously, but in a different position in the MD, because you're usually leading a little bit vocally as well, right? It's like maybe you have a talkback mic or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. But to be honest, I think too, the longer I've been in MD, the more I MD like a worship leader, where it's like, I try to, and what do I mean when I say that? I mean, like, if I try to put myself in the place of, okay, if I was leading this set, like this, like, I don't know. I think what I'm getting at is maybe, you know, a year or two ago, whatever, when I was MDing, I feel like I put on more of like okay, I'm a musician. Let's play the parts. Let's get through the songs, whatever. Now I really try to be both. Like, I want to obviously still crush my parts or, you know, whatever, but like really make sure we're not rushing through moments. We're not, you know, jumping into a build just because it feels good musically or whatever, you know.
Right.
I'm trying to make sure my decisions aren't coming only from, this is what I would do musically, and more just like, okay. So when I'm MDing, like, the crowds are pretty hot in my ears. Obviously the leader's vocals are very hot in my ears. Yep. And like, basically the whole time my eyes are locked on the leader, you know? Because when I'm leading, I know that it's like, I want people to kind of have a sense of where I'm at, even from my body language, you know? And I want to know that, you know, they're not going to miss a call even if it's like kind of subtle and I don't know what I'm doing, but at the last minute I'm like, actually this is, you know, what it is, or whatever. I don't know if that's a good answer.
No, so it's kind of like that's what you would want from your MD when you're worship leading, and so you're trying to bring that to the table. I hear
exactly.
That. Are there certain things like that you do either before even the day of the set, or, you know, midweek, or in rehearsal to set up the band for a win? What are some things that help? And I suppose, what do you define as a win in that sense as well?
That's a good question too. Well, obviously I run through all the songs. I'm usually, these days, if I'm not leading, I'm playing bass, and that's often where I MD as well. So it's like, I just want to run through all the songs. And again, obviously all of our musicians, we want them like thinking as little as possible, like about, like, you know, like in the ideal world, it's like, you know, these songs in and out, you know, your instrument in and out, to where it's like, it's almost second nature. Yep. But as an MD, you want it to almost be second nature, you know, where you really can have that mental space to be thinking a couple of steps ahead or whatever. Yes. And then other things I do on the beforehand is really just confirming arrangements with leaders, and kind of trying to preempt questions that I know come up a lot. Like, you know, whether it's different versions of a song, or you know, some people do this hold going to this chorus, like, do it, you know, whatever. Trying to preempt those things, so that way we're not kind of wasting time at sound check asking, but it's like, I'll kind of preempt that, maybe communicate to the band, like, this is, you know, this is kind of what we're going for. So that way we can just roll up and run it exactly how the leader kind of expects it, you know, or wants it. And then two, I'm kind of like, I like to just obviously listen through sound check as I'm hearing things. I try my best not to always call out things in the moment of like, hey, can this, you know, this person, like, let's try XYZ or whatever, you know. Sometimes it's good in the moment because we actually need to do it all together again and feel it. But sometimes it's like, I'll just kind of keep a mental note of like, let me talk to that person after, and like, if they, you know, change what they're playing slightly on chorus 2, that'll, kind of make it feel better or whatever,
Yeah.
So I guess that's what I mean too when I'm thinking about big picture beyond just, my instrument, beyond just, I think another like practical maybe challenge for MDs is doing our best to learn everyone else's parts too, or at least have a pretty good idea of what everyone should be doing and like what the space they should be filling. For drums, you want to know like kind of what level of dynamic they're at any given time, and maybe a general, you don't have to know the exact kick pattern, but it's like enough to be like, oh, something's kind of off here or whatever, or maybe it's like you don't know the exact guitar part, but it's like it needs to be chimey and higher, and you're playing too low and chunky. It's like it can be little things like that, but I think it's a good exercise for us to not just know our parts inside and out, but like try to learn everyone's. And then one other little practical thing, uber practical, that my friend Jonathan, who MDs a lot for me and for Bethel Music, he's like, I always look for, which I kind of hit this on like preempting questions, but he's like, I'm always thinking about like, are there traps in this song? Like, are there places that if we're really not paying attention, like it's going to be easy to, get a hiccup, or maybe it's like a song. I'm trying to think of a good example, but it's like maybe if we repeat the chorus, we don't do a hold, but if we do repeat the chorus, we do a hold, or or I just said the same thing twice. Or like King of Kings is a good example where it's like, are we going to come down on the tags and play a 3, or are we going to come down and play a 6, or are we going to repeat it and or just those little things. So it may not be something you ask the leader about, but like, okay, if they throw a chorus, I'm going to get ready to count chorus 2, 3, like making sure we all repeat at the same time, like something like that. And then he'll also, especially if a song is unfamiliar to him, or if there's weird holds or weird bar or whatever, he'll even, as he's playing through, like practicing throughout the week, he'll even practice like counting if there's sections he needs to count, or whatever. Which I was like, wow, that's actually so smart. Like,
yeah, totally.
Because it is easy, like especially if you're, playing in a, I don't know, just a song, like especially a song in like 3/4. It's like if there's a 3/4 song, everyone's like, do I count in 2 3 4 or 1 2 3 or whatever? I don't know.
No, I hear that. Yeah, songs like All Is For Your Glory, and it's like...
Yes. So like that weird hold out of the pre-chorus.
Yeah.
I always know it's like, I just need to, even if it doesn't feel right, I'm just going to start counting when I hit the 5, and that's it.
Yeah. Or Forever Yahweh, which is like the vocalist's nightmare for when you actually start singing that line and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. No, I'm all for it. What are your debriefs look like afterwards when you come off stage? Talk to us a little about that, how you talk through those types of things.
Yeah, great question. Our debriefs are, they're not as nitpicky as maybe people might assume.
Okay.
Or I don't know, maybe people don't assume that. Maybe the exception is, like if we're on a tour and we're going, for 15 nights, night 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 are probably going to have more like practical debriefs of like, let's tighten up the shit, like how, whatever. And then versus like church, like a Sunday night at church is one set. We get off, and as a leader, I'm more concerned with like, okay, I want my team to feel like they crushed that. We followed, you guys followed me well, we followed the Lord together, So a lot of our debriefs, we do our best to encourage and compliment in public, and then criticize or give feedback to in private, for the most part.
Okay.
Unless it's like a group, like we all we all did this.
Pull our head in here.
It's all on us,
Yeah.
And so sometimes we'll talk about musical things in debriefs. Another example maybe is like in our morning rotation, we have an 8 a.m. service and a 10:30. So a lot of times after the 8 a.m., we will talk about musical things we could button up, and then after the 10:30, it's more like, that was awesome. Like, man, this moment that kind of came was really great. Like the way you guys stewarded that was awesome. And like, I didn't even know what to ask for. And you guys, so a lot of times it's a little more on the kind of, I mean, dare I say, like kind of more spiritual side, if you will. And and then we usually try to kind of like pray like a little seal, like okay, because the thing that I've been praying in our kind of team meetings that I've just felt it's one of those things where it's like I don't often just pray the same thing verbatim, but sometimes there are just things that it's like this just feels whatever. And one of those things is when we're in debrief. I actually got this from partly from my friend Hannah. Of we pray, we're like, Lord, we give that set back to you. It's on the altar. We can't take any moment of it back.
Right.
You know? And so we give all the moments that we felt awesome about, and we give all the moments that we felt embarrassed by, or we felt, confused, or we didn't know what to do, or we messed up. And we give you the moments where we felt like we were crushing it, and we leave them all there. And we thank you that none of them were wasted on you. And like that's kind of my covering too, of just like when I was a teenager, that's what I wanted someone to pray over me after sets, because how many times do we come off of a set and we're like, oh my God, I missed that thing, and whatever, or like, and then also vice versa, when there's times in our life where maybe we're doing better, and it's our pride is more of the issue than our shame. And it's like, man, I freaking crushed that, like, it's just such a good reminder that I actually can't have any of that back. Like I left it all there, and the Lord was gracious to meet me in all of my lack, as well as all of my, all of what I think is my strength, yeah. And so, but then like I said, we'll give any like kind of personal, like, hey, let's work on this tone, whatever. Like, I don't usually do that in front of everyone. It's like, I'm going to pull that person out or shoot him a voicemail. It's like, dude, you crushed it. Like, I wonder if we XYZ. Like I did that the other day to a drummer.
Right.
He did amazing, but I was like, dude, I think you're hitting the snare a little funny, and it's not a big deal. Like, let's, like you should have someone who actually knows what they're talking about, which is not me, because I don't know where you should hit it, but I just know that I think you're hitting it funny because it sounds funny. Like it doesn't sound right, Yeah. And then he was like, dude, I've been wondering that, like, and that's the thing too, is I think as leaders, we're so afraid. Not so afraid. I shouldn't speak for everyone. I'm afraid to give people feedback because I don't want to hurt their feelings.
Yeah.
But someone told me once that I thought was so good is that criticism is an investment. As a leader, I'm investing into my people by giving them constructive criticism and constructive feedback, because it's an investment in the sense that it actually costs me more to either go out of my way or respond to, if they're like, hey, how was that? To actually give them a real answer versus like, dude, it was awesome. Like that doesn't actually cost me anything. So I'm not investing anything into them, Right. I'm letting them walk away unchanged. And so I think people are more hungry for real feedback than we give them credit for sometimes. And we're more concerned with their feelings when it's like, in all honesty, a lot of people really do just want to grow,
True.
And it doesn't mean you're not going to encounter people that are like, I can't believe you said that about my guitar tone, and yeah, we take those as they come.
Yeah. Man, that's golden. I think that was worth the price of admission, just for that little golden nugget there. That's so good. There's so many things that I could talk to you about, but I do want to sort of take a bit of a sidestep towards songwriting if I can.
Yeah.
Because that's obviously an area of grace and gifting on your life, and we've been blessed by so many of your songs in recent years. So a bit of a strange one to start off, I suppose, in this sort of realm of questions. But is there a song, it could be an old song, it could be a recent song, but a song that you wish you'd have written?
Oh, God, there's too many to count.
Right.
Honestly, one that's come up recently that people do think that I wrote, and I have to sadly say, no, I didn't. Two, actually, is The Blood.
Okay.
And Center off of Bethel Music's latest album.
Yeah, the latest one.
I feel like,
Both
and sometimes it just happens is you lead a song and you do it enough that people are like, oh, I'm sure he wrote that. And I'm like, I wish I did. I really wish I did, because they are awesome songs.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No, so cool, so cool. But yeah, you've been obviously writing and being a part of co-writing some incredible songs in the last few years. I guess in the world now that we live in of CCLI charts and YouTube streams and Spotify algorithms and so on and so forth, how do you maintain the integrity and purity of the craft in terms of like that offering of worship to the Lord? And when you're going into a writing session, not going in with the mindset of like, I'm going to write the next church hit, or, you know, the one that's going to work on the radio, or, you know, get the double award, or whatever it might be. Like, how have you journeyed that even when you're songwriting at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the question that we all continue, like we remain asking over the course of our lives. I think it's kind of this twofold, again, tension of, I want to be really like aware of that. And like, I think it's like I think it's Psalm 139, right? Like, search me and know me. Like, that's the continual prayer is, search me and know me, reveal any grievous way in me, so that you can lead me in the everlasting way, in the way everlasting, you know? It's like, I want to be so known by God that he will take me with him, you know? Yeah. And so it's like, I think there's that side of like, I want to be aware that is a bent of mine. That's probably a bent of every person, you know? It's like, money is Bill says this, money is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. Yeah. And it's true of any of us, you know? But at the same time, I also don't want to, it's like this tension of, I don't want to give it too much credence to where it's like, all I think about is like, I just can't, like, because then it's like we get in this place of, we're resistant to favor. And also, I will say too, it's like, it's not like I know like what's God's favor and what's not God. I don't know. Yeah. But I am saying, kind of maybe even hypothetically, it's like, I don't want to be so like, ooh, keep the money away from it, that like I'm resisting like the Lord like blessing me, you know? Totally. And I also think it goes back to even that thing of, you know, I read, I think it's, is it Proverbs? I think it's Proverbs 10. The Lord doesn't let the righteous go hungry. Yeah. Every time I read that, I'm like, the Lord's taking care of me. You know, the Lord's taking care of me. And I think back to, like we were talking about the Levites, that was their full-time job. Right. You know, and so I think we ride in this tension of, it's okay for me to be compensated by my church for me to do what I do. Right. Because I'm bringing my gift to the house and I'm equipping the saints. Yeah. And that is the purpose of the church, is to minister to God, equip the saints, and reach the world. And that's what I'm doing. I'm ministering to God. I'm equipping the saints every weekend. And so I'm a part of that, you know, and it's okay for me to stick my proverbial, you know, fork in the pot and get whatever comes out. You know what I mean? Yeah. No, totally. But I also want to make sure I, you know, say that it is equally as weighty in my mind always, that it's like, Lord, I want to have pure motives, you know? Yes. I even had a moment like this past month where I was like, you know, because it's like, it's songwriting. It's also like, you know, someone wants you to come lead worship. It's easy just to like look at the honorarium or like look at what they're going to give you and be like, is that worth it? You know, can I make that way? And again, it's like, it's in this tension of, now I'm not just a single guy anymore. It's like, I have a wife, I have a son. Yeah. So it's like, I think there's some of that. It's like, it's okay for me to think prudently, you know, but again, it goes back to the whole lordship thing. It's a matter of who's my Lord, you know? Jesus says you can't serve two masters. You can't serve both God and money. So I can't be serving God with my lips, but then only taking the trips that pay over X amount, you know? Yeah. And I think too, and then to maybe land this plane in the songwriting realm is, it's up to God whether a song like is caught by the church or not too. And I think that it's a good thing to rest in. It doesn't stop me from wanting to grow as a songwriter, but it practices. The more I remind myself that, the more I confess it with my own mouth, you know, the more that it practices that muscle of trusting God. It's like, you know, most of the songs that people know me for, even like Son of Suffering, it's like, I wrote that song. Yeah. I mean, I was one of 4 writers. I didn't even, you know, I didn't even do the heavy lifting. Matt Redman did all the heavy lifting on that. But in God's mercy, it's like my name is on it, and now I get to carry it too as a leader. And so I don't know. I feel like I said so many things and also nothing at the same time.
I appreciate the candor and the transparency in which you're sharing. I think it's really helpful. And I think as well, like, to the point of, what works in a church, like, or that's taken up by the church and is widespread, there's probably some key fundamentals in there when it comes to like good songwriting, when it comes to, writing for congregation and so on.
Exactly.
That are just good practices to have. So, again.
It's almost like you can't just black and white it, because it's not like, like the thing that is monetized is whether or not churches sing it. But we want churches to sing it. Like,
right.
If we want, like, even taking the money off the table, it's like, if I believe in this song and it's, it's giving my congregation a prayer to put in their mouth and a truth to put in their heart, then I want them to sing it. But then the false humility is like, well, no, I can't want that, because then I'll get paid for it.
Right. Yeah.
What's that about? So it's like, that's where I'm like, that's where the B-side is for me, where it's like, I don't want to get so caught up in I'm resistant to it that I won't just write a song that I think actually people will sing.
So
you know what I
good.
mean?
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I totally want to honor your time as well, and I realize that we're rapidly running out of that time. So I guess in all of the your world that's so big right now in worship leading, in MDing, in your local church, but then also, like I say, touring, and producing all the things. What's something, or how do you stay grounded in all of that? Like, I love, I'm only observing from a distance, but I love that you could go anywhere and appear on any podcast, but you say yes to little bitty podcasts like this, and but also you're still serving in your local church. What are some of the grounding things for you that keep your feet on the ground in amongst all of that hugeness of how your world's opened up and what God's sort of allowed you to experience in the last few years?
That is a great question. I mean, I think, are you married?
Yes, sir.
I think it's hard to be married and not, have a reality check every day.
Amen.
You know what I mean? So I think that's a big gift in my life is my wife really, irons out my rough edges in that way, and like asks me questions. If anything, she's better at keeping me from being like falsely humble. Okay. She's like, you know what I mean? I don't know. Like, I think maybe that's just because like that's more my bet. I grew up in the South, so it's more like, like woe is me, like, and so, but anyway, I think marriage is a big gift in my life for that. And like you said, I mean, I'm planted in my local church, and I think that's a big reason, honestly. Like, it's a fruit of it, but it's also a reason, like a part of it. I think, I mean, my wife knows this, but it's like, I want to be on a local worship team until they put me in the ground, and it doesn't have to be, obviously I love Bethel. I'll stay here however long Lord has us, doesn't have to be Bethel, but I just don't like, and maybe it doesn't need to be a worship team, but I just have this conviction of like, my family will always be in a church, and we'll be like serving it. We'll be bringing our gifts, to the house. Yep. And I think that is a big part of what keeps me grounded. Cause it's like, I actually talked to, do you know who John Wilds is?
Totally.
He's, he's one of our artists as well now, and he's the best. And I actually asked him a similar question in maybe 2021 or 2022 or something. Sure. I was like, dude, you're all these places. Like, I see you on Jesus Image YouTube. I see you on, like whatever, like you're singing so high and you're obviously so, And I was like, dude, how do you stay pure? Like, how do you say, like when you're, and his two thoughts were, he was like, I stay home as much as I can. I stay home because home is where people tell me when my poop stinks, is
Right.
what he basically says,
Yeah.
When you're in a green room and you've been invited there, it's like,
Yep.
like you're the guest.
Yep.
And, you don't give guests, life on life feedback, about, usually. And then the second thing he said is, which is along that, is he's like, I lead worship at my church every Sunday. And to those people, they don't know me from YouTube. They know me as I lead worship at my church on every Sunday. Like that's how they know me.
Yeah.
And so I think about that all the time. And anytime anyone asks me this question, that's what I think about. Is like, I want to be not only, obviously submitted to my own wife's like feedback and stuff like that, but it's like, I'm going to be a part of a church that doesn't know me, like just from YouTube. Like they see me face to face. I check my kid into the childcare, and they like to them, I'm just another worship leader, Not that they don't obviously no one's like mean, I'm not saying
No.
they treat me like
No,
but you know what I mean?
human.
So exactly. I'm just another human here in this town,
Yeah, I'd say kids are great at doing that as well.
Kids are doing, exactly.
Your kids do not. I've got two, and they don't really care that you're the guy on stage,
Exactly.
playing the keyboard at all.
Yeah.
So they just care about
So
that
true.
your dad at home and that you can wrestle them and all that sort of fun stuff. So so good. Speaking of which, like, what do you do for fun? Like outside of everything that you do with the responsibilities here and there, what's something that sort of you can, I guess, let your proverbial hair down and just blow off steam in that way?
Great question. I mean, a lot of it does have to do with my son now. I just like, play with him or go on walks, and he'll just rip his little tricycle around. And, we usually like walk, there's this coffee shop around the corner. It's like, we'll walk there every Saturday. And like, that's kind of like, okay, that's our family time, and then something I got into last year that's been really good for me, because I heard this quote that's like, if you work with your hands, you should Sabbath with your mind. If you work with your mind, you should Sabbath with your hands. And so I was like, I'm going to take that to heart. And so I started sailing, and I took like sailing lessons, and I joined this club here in Reading. And so I haven't done it all winter, but I'm very excited about it's finally warming up here again.
Right.
And so I'm going to get back out there on the lake. And I like that too, because I'm alone and it's quiet and it's silent, and it's like, I'll just be out in the middle of the water. And it's good because otherwise, I don't know, my mind is, I not only work with my mind, but I just have a very active mind. Like it's hard for me to, especially when I'm deep into a project or if I'm working on a song, it's like, it's very hard for me to just stop thinking about only that thing.
Yeah.
And so that's a good, exercise in quiet and stillness,
Love it.
and it's very fun. And my wife and I like to cook, or at least go out to awesome food. We love food, so it's like finding, yeah,
so good. Okay, so to finally wrap up and let you go on in with the rest of your day. Looking back, you were talking about those early days of coming to BSSM. If you could go back and speak to the 19, 20-year-old David Funk, what would you say to him now?
I think that I would say, oh man, I'd say a lot. I would say invest in Bitcoin. I would say
That's great.
I would say probably that life is long and worship sets are short, and there's going to be a lot of them. And that kind of speaks to what I was talking about in the beginning of, I think I just used to be way more hard on myself.
Yeah.
Not just in worship sets, but anything. I thought I'd be married sooner. I thought I'd be, whatever, all of that stuff. That it's easy now in hindsight to look back, and be like, I should have just been patient, But I think, I would just say like life is long, and obviously we want to maximize every day,
Yeah.
And I'm not saying to just waste it away, but just take the pressure off in that sense, and like God's big. Life is long. God is big. it's gonna be all right. I don't know.
So good. Yeah. No, that's so good. I love it. Well, brother, thank you so much for your time and for taking time out of your day to be here and invest in this platform. And for those listening as well, I know I gleaned so much from just chatting to you, and it's been a pleasure to just connect in this way. And hopefully, we'll get to connect in the future again. Come out to Australia. And come out to Melbourne.
I will.
Come see us here. We need you over here, so it'll be great to have your ministry over here. But just want to say thank you so much again. And to those listening, watching online, thanks so much for tuning in and being part of this. And we'll see you on the next episode.